Okay, all right, can we start, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, could we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, please be seated, and we'll call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, could I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Christine Adamzak.
Here.
Councilmember Linda Hammer.
Here.
Councilmember Michael Jazinski.
Here.
Councilmember Gerald Kaminsky.
Present.
Councilmember Brian Nowak.
Present.
Councilmember Brian Pilarski.
Present.
Supervisor Diane Benchkowski.
Here. Okay, we have 7 people, or council members present. First item is to go through the town board resolution items. So if you get your packet out. We do have a public hearing tonight for the community block grant and home programs. Then we do have the transfer of funds for from the housing rehabilitation to the village of Sloan. It's from the 2021 funds. Is Rachel here?
Yes, I
Was it from the 2021 or 2022?
am. These are actually
Oh, I'm sorry,
2020 funds.
2020. Okay, so that's what I'm sorry. That was the question I was going to ask. So we have to do transfer of funds because it's coming from the 2020 funds. Brian Kraus.
The 2020 at the top of the resolution is just the calendar year that it's effective.
All right. So it's coming out of the 2020 CDBG funds, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I hope it's self-explanatory because it's not, it looks like it's coming out of the 2021 funds. All right, the next resolution is the warrant. Any questions on that? And then resolution 2022-39, Councilmember Nowak and Kaminsky. Do you just want to explain what happened here with this resolution?
Sure. You'll see later on in the agenda, resolution number 28. It's numbered 2022-64. Basically, all we're doing here is making sure that the agreement that has been negotiated and worked out is a standalone one-year agreement and not a renewal of the existing agreement. That's all we have to do is pass a resolution that clarifies that. In order to pass the clarification, we have to pass this first.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. Resolution 4 is the negative seeker for 3705 Harlem Road. Do we have Rick Colburn on or Nick Cultura to go through some of these?
Yes, Diane, I am here.
Okay, Nick, can you just explain this project real quick? Because there's a negative seeker rezoning and I believe site plan.
Yes, so 3705 Harlem Road was the old vacant, I believe it was an old gas station or workstation or something like that, that they're proposing a new retail business on the site. Currently, the site is zoned NS Neighborhood Service, which does not promote retail sales. So there was a request for rezoning to go to C Retail Business District, which also reflects the other properties within the area. And then
All right,
Yeah.
hold on 1 second, please. Councilmember Nowak has a question.
Yeah, well, not a question. I think we lost Councilmember Adamzak and she's waiting to be let back into the meeting. Just so I don't see her on our list here, and
She
Oh,
was
okay.
let back in.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilman. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay, so there's really no site developments. It's more so converting the existing building into a new use. The owner is proposing a smoke shop on the site. So EAC determined that there was really no environmental impacts, so we gave a recommendation for the rezoning to you, the board. And the site plan is more so for circulation of traffic and striping layouts, and majority of it is existing conditions.
Okay, Nick, thank you. While you're still here, could you go through the 4455 Genesee pole barn addition project?
Sure. Calspan and Kubrick proposed, I guess, let me venture back. We had the proposal that was approved previously for the hypersonic, testing facility. Due to some conflicts with funding, they had to propose a pole barn for storage, cold storage for their site until they work out their issues with financing for the project. But this is just a cold storage pole barn. I do not have the resolution in front of me, so I can't recall the actual site size of the building. I believe it was 32 by 120, I believe. Let me pull up my file for you.
Correct.
Yeah,
That's correct.
Yeah, so it's just a pole barn, cold storage, far enough away from any residential. I think it was 900, over 900 feet away. EAC and planning board gave a recommendation to you, the board. It's a simple project, just a cold storage pole barn.
900 feet away from what?
Closest residential.
Okay, and nobody from the residents went to the planning board?
No, they did not.
Because, we've had complaints before, so I just want to make sure.
You're correct, Supervisor. So my question is, were the residents aware of this? Were the residents aware of this?
Where is Rick Coburn? Isn't he on tonight?
Yeah, Diane, I'm right here.
Okay,
There was yes, hi. There was no notification for the planning board except for posted in the paper. As far as that being reviewed, there was no zoning, so it wasn't a notification to all the adjacent neighbors. I do not know if the two most current neighbors down there were notified personally.
Okay, because Rick, as you well know, we do have neighbors down there that are very upset right now with Calspan, and we are working with Senator Tim Kennedy and Congressman Higgins over Calspan. And I just want to make sure that, because I get text messages on a daily basis, and I know that you're aware of the resident issues over here. So I just hope that this doesn't bring in any more issues than we already have on hand with them, with the residents.
I'll second that. Thank you, Councilwoman. I know you were working with them.
Yes.
And we don't want to, so I think we need to notify the residents first. Can we?
Yes, I
hold
agree
on?
with you, Supervisor. Like I said, I am now in with the Senator Tim Kennedy and Congressman Higgins with Calspan and Kubrick over issues with the residents. So I just want to make sure that the residents know what's going on, because right up to today, and I've been getting text messages on a daily basis from the residents.
So, Christine, to just share a couple of things. So in your conversations in the meetings with, I'm assuming you're meeting with Calspan regarding the previous noise complaints and the remediation work that's ongoing with the berms and the plantings and the
crash.
noise. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the question in regards to that is the ongoing concern they have with the crash facility specifically and the noise that they're having daily, or
Yes,
is that
and
what
I
we're
mean,
talking? Okay.
right.
Okay. Like I said, I've gotten those text messages from the one resident almost daily, and most recently since you've had that meeting with Mark over at CalSpan, and I haven't heard any further movements as far as any intentions for any additional remediation at this point. I have not been notified.
Well, I think as a goodwill effort to also help CalSpan, because we don't want them to get any more heat over. Another thing is just to try to get the residents to be okay with that, or at least have some, be notified.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the pole barn was previously approved in the original plan for cold storage. It was increased in size just about amount of the things, and it was about a 10% increase in the size of the building, from my understanding, but its location was pre-approved. There's just a modification, why we had to revisit it. We told them there was a change. If you're adding that size, another few hundred feet, that we would definitely have to revisit to the board because of the ongoing concerns.
Councilmember Nowak, you're the mover on this. What do you think?
Yeah, you and I are both the movers on this item. The pole barn's in the center of the property, and Mr. Coburn, if you can clarify, isn't the pole barn, the intent of it is to reduce the noise situation on the property? That there's something regarding a compressor? Is that what this is dealing with?
No, this specifically is the storage of the equipment. The building's not going to be completed, and they've got some equipment coming in from out of the country that they need to store and make sure they keep it climate controlled for the time frame for the development project. So they knew they were going to need this pole barn. It is just strictly, nothing's going on in this building. It's just strictly storing stuff on site to be able to be put into the new sonic tester, which is, again, the project that's ongoing right now. And that is probably, like I said, what Nick's mentioned, several hundred feet further than the crash test facility. We do have an ongoing complaint from the one resident regarding the crash test facility that she's been complaining since day one. And we did, Brian, you were out there, we did a mitigation for the testing of the sound attenuation. We knew that they added the sound attenuation curtain. We do know they run periodically between 5% of their test one way out of that garage while it is open, because of the nature of the testing itself. The rail goes right out of the building. So it is something that has to be open for those periodic tests. And I would like to see, once the berm is completed with all the cotton bushes installed, which are about a 10 or 12 foot buffer, that should give a 15 foot plus or minus buffer along that whole residential district. We hope will mitigate a lot of the sound that they're experiencing, but that will be done in the spring. The berm was completed in the fall, and the plantings, I believe, are happening in the spring.
Gotcha. Yeah, I remember when we talked about this at the EAC. Several of the projects on the property all came up at once, both what was currently being worked on and what was historically done. So it was all jumbled together. There was discussion of other projects on the property dealing with a compressor and housing that. So I was, all of that was in mind at the same time when we were talking about this. But right in the resolution, it talks about being cold storage. For my part, I'm okay with moving ahead with this particular one tonight. If we were dealing with something that was more noise related, testing related, I'd be fine with putting a delay on that and talking to residents. That's just me. I don't know how the supervisor feels about it, considering she's also on the resolution.
Well, I would like Councilmember Adams-Zach's input, because she has been working very closely with these residents, and thank you, because I just couldn't address that. But what do you think, Councilmember Adams-Zach?
I would just like to inform the residents. I don't want them to say it's just another thing that we kind of slid under their noses without reaching out to them. I mean, at the end of the day, they are taxpayers. And I know,
agree.
and I know that they're having issues with their assessments right now on their houses, because I mean, they're in this neighborhood and they've got to listen to this. I mean, these neighbors record the noises and they send them to me. This is no joke. I mean, these poor neighbors are really having issues. And, you know, I know some of the people say, oh, it's just a few. These are the group of people that are speaking for the neighbors. And this is no joke. I mean, you have neighbors that are having issues with anxiety, issue with high blood pressure over all this. To me, that's health issues. And I don't want to mess with that with these residents.
So Rick, would it hurt if we waited 2 more weeks, and Councilmember Adams, would you be able to meet with them?
Yes, I will.
Meeting.
Yes.
Would that be okay, Rick, to wait 2 more weeks?
No, absolutely, Diane. I would like to meet with them, discuss specifically this project and its execution moving forward because of the urgency. And I definitely think 2 weeks is not something that I don't even believe they're going to be starting this construction within this week with the weather conditions that is out on site. But I haven't been there in a few weeks. We were out there discussing one other matter. Also, to let everybody know, we're in the middle of a investigation regarding the noise pre and post on the whole parcel, that they hired a specialized engineer to go back and look at every single functioning operation of all the buildings, what noises were there. They monitored for almost a month to get the wind directions and making sure everything was relevant to a certain degree, knowing when we're post-construction with this, the mitigation that should be completed will be tested again to find out what those levels are at those property lines, and believe what they've done to this point will help reduce those. The one concern I do have is the one test that does happen daily. It's about a 13-second test with about 2 or 3 seconds of noise. That is disturbing to me, and I would agree that the neighbor who has been commenting about that the most, that's a loud noise, and I will agree with that. It does get up to 125 decibels. It lasts for about 2 to 3 seconds. Once the crash is completed, and then that's the extent of it for the day. And so I know that's going to continue. I don't know what we can do specifically to stop that test is my only concern, but I would like to see if we can continue on with mitigation matters to take the humming noises that we've already had residents complain about, and other truck movements and certain other testing that's there. So I would believe that 2 weeks would be more than fine.
Well, thank you, Rick, and thank you,
Thank you,
Councilmember
Rick.
Adams.
I will set it up, Rick, and I will definitely include you on that meeting so that you're involved with it.
Thank you, Christine. That's
You're
great.
welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so are you okay, Councilmember Noah?
Absolutely. On that note, I'd be fine if we pulled it. I mean,
I am too.
I have no problem notifying the residents. I mean, there are other projects on the property, so going forward with the other additions, we just got to make sure that those notices are going out, because those are the ones in terms of noise and all that. Not to say that this is not impactful at all, but those are the ones that are going to be more impactful, are going to have a more significant impact on the noise issues that they're dealing with.
I agree. Okay, well, thank you both, and Rick and Nick Cultura. So we're going to pull these 2 resolutions. There's a negative seeker
Thank you.
and site plan till the next meeting. They're pulled from the agenda tonight. Okay, so then the next one we go to is the Ucrest Fire District rezoning of 234 Clover Place. Do you want to just talk about this real quick? Either Nick Cultura or Rick Colburn?
Well, there should be a call for public hearing,
Okay,
for Ucrest Fire Hall to come in and speak about their new training and storage facility that they're proposing on the north side, vacant residential land. Currently there was a vacant residential home that they demolished, and 3 additional lots that they're trying to convert to their proposed project. Since they are residential, we've had multiple meetings with Ucrest Fire Hall representatives, and we suggested that the parcel be rezoned to community facilities, which is the same zoning as the fire hall itself, just for any future developments to help them along the way. We felt this was the best course of action for them, and now they are here in front of the board to request a public hearing to help notify the additional or the abutting residentials of their project to have as they move forward through the development process.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
No
Okay.
question. Just to Nick regarding the site plan. On base camp, there was one going back to January 6th. Is that the most recent site plan that has been provided to the town?
I will double check. Let me double check for you. I believe so. They relocated it, I believe, 10 feet away from the residential home or property.
Yes,
So-
they did.
Yeah, so let me double check.
All right,
Yeah,
thank-
you had sent that to us through an email. I think we got the new.
Yes, I did. I believe it was January 6th.
And there was somewhere that they even brought up something about putting maybe even a stone facade on the building, so it would look similar to the fire hall. And they had some different ideas going on there, so I don't know if they finalized it or not.
I apologize. That was January 10th. I uploaded it. But yes, they're still looking at different design standards and how they want to do the exterior of the building. There's still a lot of discussion that needs to be done. This is for just the rezoning. They will be back in front of you for site plan approval, which I'm sure they will have a formal presentation with elevations in the future.
Thanks,
Okay.
Nick.
Anybody else have any questions for Nick on this project? It's just for calling for the public hearing. We don't have to decide anything today. Then we have items number 10 through 21 are notice to bidders for all these projects, or it's just for maintenance of these homes and town property, private property. Does anybody have any questions on that? I'll just take them as a whole. I believe Rick Coburn, your office put that together. Very nice job. So
Yes, Diane, thank you. We added a few this year because we came across some instances where we didn't have a resource. One of them is for baiting for rodents in the event where that happens. And sometimes when we have some temporary fences in the event something was happening, we have to control the site. We'd like to have somebody we can call out to secure that. And the guys did a great job putting this all together, and I really appreciate it. They're very detailed, and we got them out a little later than we'd have liked to, but we do have it at the beginning of the year, and hopefully we can get a bidder for the ice and snow removal. That's one of our hardest ones to fill, and right in the middle of it, and we're hoping.
and that would be for next year, correct? Or this year?
For 2022, yeah. So the remainder of this year and in the fall.
Okay.
Now,
Yes, I
Rick-
was looking at the specifics in those notice to bidders, and it really was done very, very well. So please thank your staff for that. Councilmember Noack?
Yeah, just so I don't, it's just the two that were new this year, right? The pest abatement and the fencing, correct?
Yes, well, a few of them got added during the course of the year this year because we had some problems. So these are repeating everything we improved from 2021, except for the last two.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, and then simple 22 resolution number 2022-58, just authorizing the town clerk to be invest our tax monies for 2022. It's a yearly resolution. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, so on resolution 23, Jill Gorman, you and I talked, you made some revisions or corrections to this.
I'm with Mark Crystal, so I'm here.
Okay, so do you want me just to mention the changes, or do you want to go through? There's just a couple there.
Sure, I can go through it. We had one, unfortunately, there was a couple typos in the document. We had one where the fees were just inverted for our OPWDD camp participants. It's actually it was 900 and going up to 927, and they were just flip-flopped on the document. And then a couple of our diamond rental fees, a similar thing happened where we had flip-flopped the documents. Scroll down a little bit. So let's see. Can you keep going? So they're going to be diamond fees. Yep. Okay, I think it's right there. No, keep going. Yep. So you're going to see actually how it says $90 and $90 under diamond permits for no lights. It's actually going to be $75 for residents. And the 115 is actually 95. We kept the same fee for residents, and the 115 will be over at residents. So, and the other one below that, it's actually 550 instead of 505 and 950 instead of the 1,000. And then we did change some language as well. The supervisor and I spoke under the pool rentals. It had listed it as from the approval of the pool supervisor. So we changed that to upon the recommendation of the pool supervisor to the town board, since we now do memorandums of understanding. We had just started that this year, so that's why we changed that language.
Does any council members have any questions for Joe about that?
No.
And then if you'll notice, most of the other ones, we did about 3% increase to, just for cost of living.
And it hasn't been increased in a while, correct, Joe?
That is correct. Due to COVID, I think the past 2 years, we really didn't touch them based on our registrations and such.
Yeah, it was just a very modest, and not every activity was increased, so.
Exactly.
Hi,
Okay.
Jill, it's Chris. Do you know if these fees are in line with the other towns?
I have reached out. We are still I won't say cheapest camp, but we are on the low end for summer camp. But that's based on, our population. We do have about 25% of our camp that is covered in full from CDBG funds. So I really hesitate to raise that significantly. But yeah, most everything else is pretty on par with other townships.
Okay, great job. Thank you. Programs are worth it. You're
Right.
doing a great job.
Okay, so then resolution 24, part-time wage adjustments. We talked about this last meeting. Any questions on that?
Michael's got something on the last resolution.
Oh, go ahead. Who does? Oh, Mike, I'm sorry, just chime in. I'm sometimes not looking at the screen. Councilmember Jasinski.
Yes, I just, when you're comparing to other towns, I think we need to provide documentation and just not take the word. I think we need actual concrete evidence of your finding.
Thank you. Jill, did you get that? Maybe next year? If you
All right,
could.
yeah, I can actually send you a couple documents. We have done that a couple of times. We do usually about 3 to 4 other townships that we look at. Are there any specifics that you'd like me to look at?
Well, anytime you're proposing any dollar amounts for anything, I just would like to see it with the surrounding towns and compare it. Just, not just saying we're competitive or we're, close to the other towns. I would like to physically see it.
Okay, sure.
Good point. Anybody else? Okay, and what about the next resolution is about the part-time youth and rec salary adjustments. Any questions on those?
I just want a confirmation that these are the rates that that the director of youth and rec was looking for.
Jill?
Yes, Brian Kraus and I went through those, and those are all correct.
All right, thank you.
Great.
Okay, so resolution 25, 26, and 27 are regarding some new hydrants that need to be installed. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes. Why do we pay a rental fee for these hydrants?
Brian Kraus? Can you answer?
We pay Erie County Water Authority for these hydrants. I'm not exactly sure why. I think engineering might be able to shed some light.
Don't we pass a fee on depending on the hydrant district you're in? I noticed on my tax bill, I think I had a fee or a rental or some type of hydrant.
Yeah, and are the fees the same in all towns in Erie County?
That answer I do not know. I would imagine they, logically they should be, but we can probably confirm that. I'll work with engineering and figure that out.
So there's no cost to the town for in this resolution. I don't see a dollar amount, correct? Brian Kraus?
No, ultimately what happens is it gets transferred or covered by the fire district. Yes,
So they absorb the cost?
correct.
Well, then the fire district passes it on to their
And then
residents, I'm
Put
sure.
into their budget then, right?
Mhm.
That's true.
Yeah, and there's a hydrant surcharge or the fire district surcharge on the tax bill. And in our budget, you could see the hydrant districts. So there's probably more information relative to the fees within the town budget.
I just would like to know where they get these fees and the method they use to calculate it.
Brian Kraus, though, we have that in our budget. So who gives you those amounts?
Erie County charges us specifically for those accounts. So
Water Authority or just the county of Erie?
Erie County Water Authority, I believe, yes.
Okay.
I can, I mean, they generally are the same charge each year, because obviously you're not adding any hydrants generally. That's what these resolutions are doing, are adding hydrants. So, yeah, I mean, in some.
And that's at their recommendation, the Erie County Water Authority's recommendation to us that we need these hydrants?
That I'm not aware of. Engineering would know that answer, probably.
Oh, all right. Pat Bowen, where are you?
Hey, I'm here with Mark.
Okay. Can you let us know, how did you get notified that we need these hydrants? And are they making,
In most cases, the older streets, the hydrant spacing don't meet current requirements as far as spacing goes. So what Water Authority does when they do a water line improvement project is they'll install new hydrants so that the hydrant spacing meets the current standard.
So what's the difference between the two standards? I'm sure the hose fits on the hydrants. It's probably universal, I'm assuming, right?
It's the distance between hydrants.
So the distance between hydrants and is there a code that requires that?
They do it, I think, based on standards, industry standards. And I think the one that's used is referred to the 10-state standards.
And who puts together this industry standard?
It's a technical group that does studies and recommends changes and establishes the standards.
I understand that part, but who specifically puts that standard together?
That I couldn't tell you.
Well, these are questions that I need to know.
well, actually, Councilmember Jazinski, there's also, it says resolved that the town clerk is directed to forward a copy of this resolution. And it mentions somebody you could contact at the Erie County Water Authority too. I mean, we're on the resolution. Do you want to hold these until you get more information? We don't have to.
Yeah, I'd like to maybe get what the fire districts, they're have the concern of putting these on and maybe talk to them and get their feelings.
Well, it does say that, like on resolution 25 is Doyle, 26 is Ucrest, and 27 is Bellevue.
Those are the proposed sites, but do we know how do we get their input on this?
Well, I don't know, but do you see on top, it says authorize Erie County Water Authority to install 3 hydrants in Doyle Fire District. So it mentions the fire
I
district.
understand that part, but I'm just deferring back to my question. What does the fire district feel about it? Just because somebody recommends something, it may not be feasible or even be right.
Correct. So I don't know, Pat, how did you get notified about these?
I don't remember if it was the Erie County Water Authority or design consultant that's doing the design for these particular projects. Usually notify us that additional hydrants are needed.
What projects? I don't understand.
Do they base that on how many fires are in the area based off of how much water you need to get to these residents? I mean, how do they calculate this?
Again, it's all based on the industry standard for hydrant spacing to promote or improve public safety.
If you can get me that industry standard and maybe share it with the board members, that would be great.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
if you can get that industry standard and maybe share it with the board, that would be great. So we understand the industry standard.
All right, I can do that.
Yeah, and if you could send us the actual notification, I don't know, how did you get notified about this? Is there a letter that comes in the mail, an email?
It was either a letter or an email.
If you could send us that, I'm curious now, because what I've had happen to us is residents don't want a hydrant. Like, for instance, the resolution for Doyle, they're going in front of 98 Eris in the corner of Eris and Parker and 216 Raymond Drive. Sometimes those residents don't want a hydrant. Then we run into that problem.
Does it affect their insurance?
I don't know. Does it?
Yes, it does. On your homeowner's insurance, there's a section that you need to put the distance between your home and the nearest hydrant.
Oh.
And I'll add in my capacity as a volunteer, we've got to drop the line, wrap it around a fire hydrant, and then drive up to wherever the fire is. So the further spaced out these are, the longer it takes to get the water to the truck, water from the truck to the house. I mean, having more of these on the street does make it easier to begin fighting a fire once you respond. So there's that piece of it. And I understand there's the billing questions and there's the engineering questions and things like that. In terms of the billing, there's an annual transfer of funds from the town to the fire districts because we collect the revenues. And within the warrant the warrant packet, it shows some of the specifics on hydrant charges. I don't know exactly when we'll be transferring the funds, but when those lines come up on the warrant, you can take a look at the other supporting documentation. You should be able to find the hydrant fees in that to at least answer that question. We probably have it from last year and the year before and going back to get a sense of what the hydrant fees are.
We definitely want to equip the firefighters and make their job a little easier when it comes to saving lives and putting out fires. But I just want to know what the opinion is of Doyle, and I want to know what the standard is.
So, Councilmember Jazinski, are you wanting to pull these 3 resolutions?
Yeah, I
Next
just,
meeting?
not that I oppose them doing it. It's just, I want to, see if it's really what we want to do, I'd like to know a little more information on it.
I mean, I'm okay with waiting 2 more weeks on those. So
Yeah, what district do you serve, Brian Nowak?
I'm in the Pine Hill Fire District, but like the folks in Ucrest, Doyle, and Bellevue, we all engage in mutual aid from time to time. So it depends on where folks are needed, but I'd say the vast majority of my calls are in the Pine Hill District.
Yeah, the reason for my question is that would you know what the standard is of how many hydrants would be spaced apart?
I don't know the exact distance. The number 300 feet is coming into mind, and I don't want to go with that as gospel because I don't know if that's exactly the truth. But I can get the answer for you from at least the folks on my end, what they seem to believe that is. We'll figure out exactly what the number is.
That'd be great. Just so I have a better understanding. I'm totally on board with it, but I just want to know the logistics of it.
So you want to wait on these? If you're on board with it, do you want to just?
I'm not, well, I'd like to know the financial side of it and see if we're paying the same rate across the board for the rental fee from, say, Amherst or Tonawanda, Erie County,
I think, I don't believe it's to the penny, but my recollection of looking into this a little bit is that the hydrant fees district for district are roughly the same within a few cents. But again, we could take a look at what the records show in the last few years to get confirmation of that. But this is a question that came up previously is, are the hydrant fees the same in each fire district?
Yeah, because if that's the case, we need to level the playing field for that.
Okay, and I'm for helping the firemen because
100%.
as we've seen on the news, there's a lot of fires happening this time of year. I don't know if it's this time of year, but it seems right now in this period of time, we've seen a lot. Maybe it's 'cause space heaters, I'm not sure. So we want to make sure that the firemen can get to these fire hydrants. So I'm okay with pulling it. Is everyone else okay waiting 2 weeks?
What's it gonna change?
Right. And it doesn't hurt to get the information. So,
No impulsive decision making.
okay, so then resolution 28 is the agreement for the pre-hospital ambulance emergency services. Councilmember Nowak, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, that's the resolution that I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting when you asked me about number 3. I mentioned
Yes.
resolution 28, 2022-64. All we're doing is clarifying that what we're doing is a standalone 1-year agreement instead of a 1-year agreement that's an extension. That's basically what these resolutions are for. And it's related to the same contract with the same language.
Okay, anybody have any questions on this? Because we are without a contract right now, so we want to get this. It's just a holdover.
Yeah,
right?
but clarification on that, we do have a continuity of service. The service has been ongoing, no problem.
Mhm.
So it's just a matter of needing a signature on a document and getting these 2 resolutions through tonight.
But
So
there
there's
were a
been
few minor changes from the last agreement, correct?
2 minor changes, correct?
Yeah. Okay, 29 is the use of the town of Cheektowaga firing range to Erie County Community College. I'm sure we have the chief on the call. If anybody has any questions for him, he's here tonight. Okay, number 30 is the meeting room regulations and rules and regulations. We've actually been talking about this quite a bit. I did have a question on this. My name's on the resolution, and Linda and I think John Sushowski were working on this, and thank you. But I noticed in the attachment, it
Kim,
mentions.
can you pull up the excuse me, Kim, can you pull up the attachment?
There you go. Number 12. It does state in there, groups will need to provide the town of Cheektowaga a certificate of insurance naming the town of Cheektowaga additionally insured for the amount of $1 million. Then underneath it says town of Cheektowaga sponsored programs exempt. Are we deciding that that includes the taxpayers groups or community groups?
They are not Cheektowaga entities. I hate to say that, Diane, but we've talked this till we're blue in the face, and we're exempting groups that are actually funded or sponsored by the town.
But yeah, but these are, our residents are going to get informed on what's happening besides the town board meeting.
But then they're gonna have to supply the $1 million, the policy. That's all there is to it. I mean, you're bringing a lot of people into that building. We're handing out keys. We don't even know who's going into the building. And we're giving them the responsibility of going in, opening the door, closing the door, clean it up. Nobody knows what's going on.
That's not part of the rules here. All I'm saying is I'm talking about 2 taxpayer or community groups that one uses the senior center and one uses the Alexander Center, that our residents go, the town board goes to hear or listen to the residents, and you're just gonna put these community groups out of business. They won't be able to hold these if you're gonna have them do this.
Yeah, but not to interrupt, and I hate to single one out, but even Duca, I'm not sure about Town Park. Duca isn't really an organization, a legal organization of any kind. It's a bunch of people that get together. They do charge dues.
Okay.
I don't believe they're a 501c3.
I hate to pick on them, but no, they're not a 501c3.
That was my understanding, and basically, it's not sponsored by the town. a lot of the people from DQ that might be the other side of the line. And it's like I said, it's not basically a registered or viable station by any standard.
Okay,
Yeah, I
Well,
mean, I've got an issue with this one because I've said over and over, I think Duca, I think the Town Park Community Association, I think those are vital groups in our community. They're block clubs. They organize as a group and come together. Whether or not they're a 501c3, I think is irrelevant for this. I get the insurance piece of it and the liability, but I don't want to lock them out of our facilities and access to be able to come together and have meetings and that, and asking a group like that for $1 million insurance policy. Yes, they collect dues, but it goes right back into the community. They purchase toys, winter clothing, stuff for the school districts and support that. The senior center, the police association. So all their money that they're getting is going right back into the community with their little bit of fundraising. Now, whether or not they stop collecting dues as part of the stipulation, I'm sure they would, but I don't think putting this on them, it's a far reach for them, and they wouldn't be able to meet that if this is the case.
I agree with Councilmember Pilarski.
I don't have a problem with the meeting there, but I mean, we have to have some kind of standard with these groups. I mean, we have to protect the town. There's liability. I don't know about you guys, but I see the notices of claims that come in every week. We get 2 or 3 notices of claims where the town's being sued for something. I mean, there has to be some accountability.
So with these groups, I mean, there's no difference from them saying, hey, we're going to gather as a group with a public assembly at a shelter at Town Park during the summer months because they can't use Alexander, but still an accident can still happen. They could just be walking past Alexander to get to Town Park and still fall and have a lawsuit. People can sue for everything, no matter what.
Right.
I think putting this burden on them is going to really hurt these two groups, which I find very beneficial in this community.
What
Well,
would be
I'll
the
tell
difference
you.
if 10 people that weren't in that group did it?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, they wouldn't be there, period. 10 people wouldn't be in that building if they weren't in that group. I mean, you have to be a town-sponsored organization. That's what I'm saying. That's what a lot of us were saying. And, the way this is written is so silly. I mean, there's no accountability whatsoever. I believe that the meeting rooms should only be available when there is staffing available, when there are people there to open the doors and lock the doors and make sure it's cleaned. I mean, we don't know if anybody stayed in that building, if anybody turned on a burner, if anybody left anything. I mean, come on, wake up. We got to smell the roses here, It's a different day and time than it used to be where you say, here, buddy, take the key and bring it back in the morning.
No, I agree about the building
is
safety
true.
and the security of it. Absolutely. I don't think we should just be leaving the buildings unlocked or the key under the doormat or lock up on your way out, any of that. Those are issues. But I think having the insurance piece for those groups, those smaller groups, is an issue for me. Other than that, I don't think we should be having operations outside of regular staffed hours because it's costing us overtime and all that. But at the end of the day, these are taxpayers that are already paying to keep that building, to light it up and all that stuff. I think they should have access to it as well.
Okay.
I agree with Councilmember Pilarski. I also want to mention, though, there's groups that meet during the day that, Jill Gorman, the card clubs that use one of those rooms, do they still do that? That's not a town sponsor.
Diane, they don't do that. They haven't done it for a couple of years now. They moved over to Carrie's building, and I think
There you go.
But it's sponsored by the senior center.
Mm-hmm.
The card. My understanding, Carrie's not here, but that was my understanding. Their card groups.
No, I am here.
Oh,
there you are, Carrie.
I am here. And the group that you're talking about that used to meet at the Alexander Center, they were one of our senior satellite groups. They were under our senior center umbrella.
Well, that's different.
Yep.
That's different. Okay, let me say this. There were a couple things that I felt needed to be in these conditions, such as all meeting rooms have to be, well, we didn't have it listed as all meeting rooms. It just, that number 1 up on there on the conditions was just basically singling out, was it the town hall? It was one of the, what is it,
You
the
see that
first one?
resolution up on the screen, Kim?
What is
Thank you.
number one? Okay, 90% of the residents, blah, 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 meeting rooms, but it doesn't say, it just says recreation center. That's what it was. We need to list all the buildings, the senior center, Alexander Center, 810 Lawson, and the ice rink, all as buildings of the town that have rooms in them, which they're not listed. And the other one was that all the meeting rooms have to be staffed. The buildings have to be staffed at the time of meetings. And I mean, if you are not ready to vote on this yet, I am willing to table it and bring it back
I would second that table.
with these changes. I mean, if we're not gonna make the changes now, bring it back in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
another.
I myself,
Mhm.
if these smaller groups have to get insurance, those two block club groups have to get insurance, I'm gonna be a no on this, no matter what language is changed in there. If they can be
Mhm.
grandfathered in or an exception to those two, I'm all for it. I think we need it in place to secure our buildings and for safety and all that, but those two groups, I mean, I do not want to push them out and lock them out of our facilities.
I'd have to agree with Brian.
Can
Me
I
too.
ask a question? Why can't these three groups meet together? I mean, we have the town-sponsored group with the police department. Why can't they all meet at the same time in the senior center? And then everybody's got a chance to open their mouth and bring forth things that they worry about in the town. It doesn't matter what neighborhood you work in or live in.
I agree, but
I mean,
some of it too, though, if you look where they meet already, Town Park meets literally at Town Park, and that's a community in that neighborhood, in that area, directly around that building, the Alexander building, within walking distance.
But
Part of the
then
same reason why we don't get people here for our board meetings is there's a lack of transportation. I'm able to cross that bridge right into Alexander to meet. Probably the same reason why we had a satellite location. Its accessibility is one reason of many. Carrie,
Brian,
actually,
do you think they all drive or walk there?
I don't
Well,
think 100% they all do, but I believe a majority of them probably do. And to provide better access and opportunities for residents over in that area in any part of town. I mean, if we could set up a spot in each quadrant of town and split it up that way to say, hey, there's a meeting at Alexander for this section, there's a meeting in Southtown for this one, I think that's great. If we need to change it around and make it to where it's, town hall is at a different location for a different public meeting, maybe that's the route to go if this is the way this is going to go. But I just don't want to.
I understand your point, but I mean, let's get back to what we're proposing here. It's meeting room rules and regulations. It's not that we're going to be worried about all these different things. I mean, there are ways we could move around this. I mean, the buildings could be rented out late afternoon when there's still people on staff. I mean, we have town groups that can't use our buildings for certain things. And I don't know why that's allowable either.
I guess what town groups aren't allowed to use. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know that.
I'm wondering
Well,
too.
the last time I heard was the symphony are not allowed to practice in the senior center.
That's not true, right, Carrie?
No, we had that discussion before when they wanted to start storing their large instruments at the senior
No,
center.
that's a no. That's a no.
Well, that's why they didn't meet here. That's why they didn't practice here. They found a different space that would allow them to store their instruments. Because not only did I have not the space here, I couldn't secure them. I couldn't guarantee.
They had they rented a storage facility. That's where they keep their drums. But from what I understand right now, they've been talking about trying to find a place to practice. Now they're a town-sponsored group. We should give them a place to practice, not to keep their equipment, but somewhere just for the musicians to practice.
Well, on that note, they're not a town-sponsored group. They're a separate 501c3
They
with just
are.
the name of Cheektowaga in their title. We fund them. Correct.
Right.
We fund them as a private, nonprofit 501c3, no
Correct.
different than the way we fund youth organizations like Southline Baseball or, Cheektowaga Youth Baseball. They just have
But
to have the name Cheektowaga in their group as a separate
They're
nonprofit.
still a town-sponsored group. When we advertise them or we bring them out, everything we always talk about is the Cheektowaga Senior or Cheektowaga Symphony Orchestra.
They haven't come to me, Linda, just so you know. They haven't come to me again since the last conversation when we didn't have a space for their instruments. And I do believe they practice in the evening. And if the rule is going to stand that there has to be a staff member on site while they're practicing, I don't have any evening staff on my list. Yeah.
I totally understand what you're saying.
But I would love to welcome them if I could. It's just I couldn't accommodate them.
No, I just heard this yesterday, so that's what I'm saying. But I mean, there's so much of a catch-22 here that we can't seem to work this out and come up with a viable policy that works for the town.
Because that being said, just so I could just, if you don't mind, let you know that Duca never met at the senior center till the pandemic hit and Maryville schools would not let them. Their plan is to go back. So as soon as Maryville will let them, their plan is to go back. They want to meet in the neighborhood that they serve. So that's where they were planning to meet. The second piece of the whole policy is if the rule is going to be that a staff person has to be on site, if what you mean by that is it has to be a staff person from the building, in other words, the senior center staff has to be here when there's, so you're talking about maintenance?
Buildings and grounds.
And that they would just open and close, or they have to physically be in the building?
They would open and close and they would be there for people to contact in case of emergency.
So in case of emergency, I always give my number. If there's a group using the building, I can be here in 7 minutes or less. But if it's maintenance, that's a John Shashelski question, because that means it takes his guys off a work site to open and close. I just wanted to make sure I knew what you meant by that.
No, and we did. I did talk to John about it, and I guess there was an incident at one point where there was a little gas leak in one of these buildings and people didn't know what to do. So I mean, it's just good to have someone there that knows how to respond to emergencies or anything that may come up during a meeting. I mean, I know it's a different world now. It's, quick and easy to call somebody on a cell phone, but I'm not worried all of that. I just want to get this policy done. And that's the main thing here, is to get the policy taken care of. So we have a uniform, code that we can base the the usage on. Because there is no fee for any of these rooms.
If we get over the insurance piece, let's say, that's all settled, for the staff person, are we okay with a council member being that staff person? So if I'm at a Duca meeting, or I'm at a Town Park Association meeting, or NOAC, or, Mike, or anybody, does that count as the staff member, and will that be sufficient?
I can't answer that question. You'd have to ask John or somebody, the attorney. I don't know. I can't answer that.
I think we got a lot of good in the policy that needs to be kept. There's some questions we still have to answer, and it sounds like the votes to table are there. So I just recommend that we stop this for the moment and move on to the next item.
I agree. Let's just pull this one, resolution 2022-66, and we'll try to work on, giving your suggestions to John and Linda on what changes you would like to see, and let's try to put this on for the next meeting. Okay. Because we got to move on. We got a couple of presentations. So 31 is the police emergency call management system. Some of these are Lisa Bolognese's resolutions, and I think most of them are pretty early. 32 is the purchase of police car computers that she wants to update every few years. And 33 is purchase of monitors, more updating, equipment within town. And I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions on any of those? And then we have our usual hiring and part-time of seasonal on resolution 34. And 35, we have to transfer a temporary, since the full-time person came back, and put him into a part-time laborer at sanitation. And I believe 36 is the a person within the assessor's office bid on the computer support assistance assistant posting for the records management department. Any questions on those two? And then we have two waiver items. One is the appointment of the Emergency Medical Services Board. And number two is the Youth and Recreation hiring. That's the one Bill Gorman needs the lifeguard. Are there any questions on those two waiver items? Okay, so let's move on to our presentations for tonight. We have a lot to talk about with ARPA funding. So Mark Crystal, Pat Bowen, Paul Polarski, are you there?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, did you give Kim Burst your presentation, or do you want to share your screen?
Yes, the email that I sent out to the board, and hopefully everyone had a chance to review that last Friday. Kim also has that copy as well, yes.
So tell her what you want up now first.
Well, if you want to go to the PowerPoint, Kim, let's go to that first, if you don't mind. Perfect. Thank you, Kim. So if you go to the second slide, Kim, we'll start with that one. So as you guys saw in the email I sent out, this is on the infrastructure side. This is basically our tentative 2022 plan, I'm sorry, broken down into 7 different pieces, okay? And I know we're kind of pressed for time here, so I'll try to run through them as quickly and as briefly as I can. So the 7 pieces are our ongoing New York State DEC consent order. There is now a second piece to that, which is our corrective action plan, a pilot study, also part of the consent order. We're talking about some potential needs to our sewer lift stations and pump stations, some upgrades for those. Continuing on with our full depth road reconstruction program, townwide drainage improvements, some town park system upgrades, and then lastly, our townwide road resurfacing program. So if you go to the next slide, Kim, the first piece is our New York State consent order. As you know, we started this back in 2016. We're looking forward to the next pieces of that. Number one on the item is our lining. We bid that last year. That's the price with that. We're going to complete that this year in 2022. And as well as item number 2, we bid that last year as well. We're going to continue on finishing our manhole rehab for shed number 8. We need to bid this year the last piece of the lining project, which is lining for sewer sheds number 9 and 10. We have a grant application through WQIP to cover that funding. And then we also need to bid the next phase of manhole rehab, which is for sewer shed number 4. That is also covered through our first EFC grant. So those things are going to happen this year. The highlighted there in red, and we're going to have a lot here in red coming up, is items we don't have funded through ARPA. For example, last year we did over 300 sewer repairs to support the work that I just mentioned. Okay, and again, based on historical average, we're going to have anywhere from 300 to 400 repairs this year to once again support that work. So that's where number 5 comes into play. Projected $1 million out of ARPA to help with those necessary sewer repair work we need to do. If you go to the next slide, Kim, this is just a photo example of our lining contract. In situ form technologies out of Boston has held our contract the last couple of years. That's just a snapshot showing the lining process, how they pull it through with tractor trailers and winches and stuff when we line our sewers. The next slide, Kim, shows actually what I mentioned by repairs. The one picture there shows a single service, 1 lateral connection to a private residence. The second one shows a double service connection from our residences. So those are the repairs that we do prior to lining. Like I said, last year we did over 300. The year before we did over 400. If you go to the next slide, Kim, now that is now our next piece of the puzzle. As you all know, we're under consent with New York State DEC. As part of that consent order, we had to submit to them what's called a corrective action plan. We submitted that to do a pilot study of rehabilitation on the lateral connections themselves in what we call sewer shed number 3. that is the Harlem, Walden, Genesee Street neighborhood, if you're familiar with that section, in and around Town Park. So part of that is to do 3 different technologies of lateral rehabilitation. We broke sewer shed into 5 mini pieces, and you see them listed there. It's a total of about 2,700 connections altogether. Each piece broken down individually totals that cost there. And once again, we have a projected $1 million with associated repairs we're going to have to do before we line these connections. That whole pilot study, which once again we are mandated to do under our consent order, has a cost of about $6.4 million to it. And once again, we're proposing using ARPA funding for that, hence it being in red. If you continue on, Kim, you'll see once again, these are typical examples of lateral connections to our main. You see there on the left-hand side, just how the roots get into our main now through the lateral connections. And then the picture on the right just shows an example of the lateral connection itself, how it's offset, it leaks. You can see the water dripping into that. So that's what their attack of matter is from the DEC. If you look at the next picture, the next slide, Kim, that just shows you what those same connections look like after post-rehabilitation. So once again, we're being mandated to do that by the state of New York under our consent order. If you continue on, Kim, the next piece of the puzzle here is our sewer stations. We own 10 individual lift stations and 2 main pumping stations. Some of these stations date back 84 years. The main pump station itself, the main one we have on Central Boulevard, you guys are all familiar with that conveys most of our flows from the north side of town into the Buffalo Sewer Authority for treatment, is 42 years old. It went online in 1980. It's been 42 years. It's served us well, but just like anything else, it's 42 years and it needs some attention. If you look at the next slide, Kim, again, these are just examples of that. The picture there is of our Ellen station. Last year, you guys approved the purchase of 2 new pumps, which is the picture on the left-hand side to put inside that station of a cost of about $27,000. But once again, that is just for the pump. We're going to, again, need to address the piping and everything else that is in that station that is original. So that's the potential cost there. If you look at the next slide, that is of just the pictures themselves. The one you see there is, there's also buildings that come with these stations. So once again, these buildings are 50, 60 years old in some cases, and not only the station themselves, but the buildings need some attention. The next slide actually shows the inside of our main pump station. That is a dresser replacement we did 2 years ago with our annual public works contract and saved a good chunk of money doing it that way. But again, it just goes to show you that the picture on the right, you see the blue dresser on there. That is a dresser in question that rotted and deteriorated. Once again, 42 years of use. In this case, it was 40 years of use when we replaced it. But there's many more moving pieces in that station that we'd like to look at and address and get back up so we can continue that station moving forward as we need. The next slide kind of goes back to the next piece of the puzzle, which is our full depth road reconstruction. Every year we try to do a station a street or 2 based on needs that we have out there. We do that in conjunction with our CDBG office, which helps us cover costs, curbing, sidewalks, some of that nature. As you all know, we had a flooding event last year on Wallace and Lemoyne off of Broadway between Grunner. So we're looking at potentially using ARPA fund at a cost of $2.6 million to potentially reconstruct both those streets. What that reconstruction will entail is new upside storm drainage, new dual sanitary sewer mains, one on each side of the street, new concrete curbing, which again, we have requested to fund through CDBG. Rachel is always helpful with her staff of finding us funding for that. New concrete sidewalks and aprons, lowered existing elevation of the road to control the runoff, and then obviously new tree planting to do some streetscaping out there. So that is our target for that piece of the puzzle. And again, if you continue on, Kim, you'll see some photos of a previous project. That is the existing conditions out there during a rain event. You can see the flooding on the corner of Grunner and Wallace and some flooding there up on the other end of Wallace. You go to the next snapshot, that is the conditions on Lemoyne. Once again, very similar. You can see how the water lays on the side of the road on top of our sanitary sewer. And then it's not helping as it seeps into our sewer system on that. The next few slides just show examples of how we do that work with internally with our in-house crews and our public works contract, and then kind of mitigate the best we can. And the last shot just kind of shows the example of how, once the curb's in place and the new pavement and stuff, it's a play on words, but it does give the street a whole new appearance. But more importantly, everything is up to current codes and helps things function better. The next piece of the puzzle is our townwide drainage improvements. Every year, as you know, through our highway program, we bond X amount of dollars for drainage improvements and paving improvements. But because of the potential of ARPA funding, we are looking at North Transit Hill, South Transit Hill, and what I call the Woods neighborhood, and doing some improvements in there. That was also an area of concern with the last flooding event in Transit Hill. If you go to the next slide, Kim, you'll see the picture of the flooding event that happened out there, especially the snapshot on the left. If you guys look at that handout, as I showed you, you can zoom in and actually see the very top of a fire hydrant there, just because to show you that there's literally 2.5 feet of water on that street. The next slide, again, just shows examples of successful projects we have done in the past. Unfortunately, those show examples of the existing corrugated metal that's in the ground. A lot of our neighborhoods, when they were built 40, 50, 60 years ago, the storm drainage that was installed was corrugated metal in nature, and it has a 40-year shelf life to it. And some of this pipe, like I said, is in the ground 50, 60 years. And that's what happens when the salt, brine, and deterioration happens over time and it sits in the ground like that. The next slide, again, shows examples of successful projects we've done. You're all familiar with the Towers neighborhood, the drainage improvements we did here a couple of years back. And once again, we upsized the current piping, all PVC. It has a 75-year life on it with the gasket. The pipe's going to last 100 years minimum. So again, the new stuff we put in obviously has a much longer shelf life and, better standards for us. And the last slide, again, Kim, is just another example of that. The other thing we do on these projects that I want to mention is you see the slide on the right-hand side there. We install a primary drainage system, which is the big pipe you saw on the previous slide. And we also install a secondary drainage system, which again is that 6-inch on, you see on the right-hand side there. And what we do is we put in connection points for the homeowners, their bubbler systems. If they have a bubbler out there, we connect it directly to the secondary drainage system. So now their sump pumps or downspouts get into the system. There's no longer bubbling and icing at the curb line. If homeowners do not have anything, we install a bubbler there anyways with a blind cap on it. So if down the road, if they want to install a drain tile to get their sump pump in the street, there's now a connection point for them. That has worked out very well for us over the last, say, 5-10 years as we've been doing that to help get the water in and out of our system as quickly as possible, which helps with the I&I issues in the sanitary as well. The next slide, Kim, is another piece of the puzzle is our park system upgrades. We've talked about this internally with ARPA and doing some things in there. Again, the ARPA world, potentially getting people out, passive recreation, walking more, getting out socially distanced, doing your things. But the whole point is to get people outside. We tried to get an application for a grant. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful because there wasn't enough funding in it from the state side, is to replace and redo the asphalt walking path within the town park, which is aging. You'll see some pictures of that in a second. And also to install a new centrally located playground, probably close to the mid-surface, the mid-road that's in there, approximately, just east of the tennis courts, but centrally located close to the road, close to the parking lot. And again, the different apparatuses, 2 to 5-year-olds, 5 to 12-year-olds, and do a couple different amenities in there. But again, centrally located, so anyone can use that. If you go to the next, and last thing in that slide as well is, I'm sorry, can go back one, is there was talk about potentially replacing some of our pools with new interactive splash pads. As you all know, last year, we had an issue with trying to get lifeguards. We could only open Town Park Pool because of staffing issues. Those pools too are aging a little bit, need some maintenance. So there was some talk out there potentially upgrading those 2 satellite pools that are not a major pool located in Town Park with new splash pads. The cost to do that is about 1.1 to do, and that's for 2, 1 at each pool, 1 at Dingens and 1 at Maryvale. If you go to the next slide, Kim, that's just a good snapshot there. Shows the existing condition of the walking path at Town Park. Obviously, it's old. It was in there 30 plus years. The grass has grown through it. It's thin asphalt. Clearly, it's seen better days. I think this picture speaks for itself on that. The next slide, Kim, is our townwide road resurfacing program. This is going to have to be through our normal bonding process and highway, because this is above and beyond any sewer drainage work. This is again, just, annual maintenance, annual mill and fills. We try to accomplish anywhere from, 8 to 10% of our roads a year. With the typical mill and fill, what I mean by that is taking off 1.5 inches of pavement, installing a new 1.5 inches of pavement. We only do streets that we know everything underneath is good. What I mean by that, drainage, sanitaries, water mains. We talk to other utility companies to make sure everyone's decent with what's there. So we're in the process of putting that together. And then lastly, there's just a couple of snapshots of what we typically do. We break that out. We do that internally with our highway department, and we get as much as we could done for that. I know there was a lot thrown at you real quick. I also attached on that email on Friday a spreadsheet. If you can find that one, Kim, that's the 2022-2024 proposed ARPA funding for the infrastructure side. It should be labeled infrastructure, Kim. If you can find that one, that kind of sums it all up on one sheet so we can discuss what we just saw. That's the other one, Kim. That's the building one. If you can find the other one that's on there. And while Kim's looking for that, again, as you most know, I mean, every year, this time of year, we put our annual, one more, Kim, that's not that either. That's one last one on there. We need to put our annual bids out this time of year, our public works bid, our concrete bid, our topsoil bid, all our support bids that we do this work with. As most of you know, we act as the general contractor, meaning the town, and we need to support contracts to work together with our town personnel. Thank you, Kim, that's the right one. To get these projects moving. They're all annual contracts. This is the time of year we get these out to bid. Again, I know there's a lot of information here, but time's of the essence. If we want to get some of this stuff done, we need to discuss it, make some decisions about what we want to do, what we don't want to do, so we can get the ball moving on these contracts. So that's it in a nutshell. I'm just going to review it again real quickly. The first item is associated repair and restoration work that we need to support our DEC work. That was about $1 million. The next piece is the sanitary sewer work related to the DEC consent order corrective action plan, the pilot study that once again we are mandated to do by the New York State DEC. That's $6.4 million. The sanitary sewer upgrades to our lift stations and pump stations, it's $1.25 million we have in there. The other things that I sent to you guys in that email were items that myself and Pat were at the board meeting back in late October or early November about potential needs. And Councilman Pilarski asked me to send an email back to the board, basically prioritizing those needs. That email was also sent to you guys as an attachment to the email I sent on Friday. One of the items we discussed back then was item 3 here, which is the Mildred Drive and Andrews Place sanitary sewer and siphon removal. We have 2 large sanitary sewer siphons. It's basically a big trap in our sanitary sewer system on a 42-inch and a 30-inch that was there back in the 50s when they built it, when there was a major drainage ditch that ran through the neighborhood that drained New York State Thruway Authority waters off the I-90. Back in the early 80s, the state did a widening of the thruway. They cut that drainage off, put new drainage in. So that large drainage system is no longer needed in that neighborhood. So the siphons can be removed, which would make our system that much more efficient. There's times during wet weather events, we look at one side of the siphon, there's a lot of capacity there. We go to the other side of the siphon, the water is right to the top of the system. Okay, so that's a major bottleneck for us. We need to remove as part of our overall order. That's about $1.75 million. The next item on there, we've talked about this independently, new equipment purchases. Louis Erikel from Sewer Maintenance submitted as part of his budget process some upgraded equipment needs for his department, one of which we addressed with the new Vector purchase that we did a few months ago. This is the leftover from that. So if you remember back in that process, when Louis submitted his budget, there was detailed information in there about the need for replacement backhoe, a single axle dump truck, and utility service truck that we utilize for all our station maintenance as well as other things we do out in the field. That has a cost of about $4.25 to it. And then the other conversation going on around was the need to replace 2 Packers in our sanitation department. And that's a cost of about $510. The reason these are also on there, just for example, last year at this time, we awarded a bid for a new refuse packer for sanitation. That was 1 year and 2 weeks ago. We have yet to receive it. That's how backlogged this equipment is out there. Just want to throw that out there for example. So even the stuff listed here, we might not be able to get our hands on it for upwards of 2 years plus. Okay. The next item on here as a recap, once again, is a full depth road reconstruction. We discussed Wallace and Lemoyne. I also added on here items that we had at the previous meeting that me and Pat went through that Brian Pilarski once again asked us to prioritize. I added them on here, which once again is Raymond Avenue reconstruction off of William Street. Keep in mind that street is going to get a new water main installed on it this year. It's going to be disturbed by Erie County Water. And then the southwest section of town, which we have major projects there coming up in 23 and 24 on the sanitary side as part of our consent order. We know there's major deficiencies there with our sanitary and storm systems. That the tune for those 5 streets is about $4 million. And then lastly on this list is the upgrades we talked about drainage wise in the North Transit Hill in the Woods neighborhood at $1 million. And the parks upgrades we discussed with the town park, upgrading the asphalt walking pathway and the new playground system located centrally and the 2 new splash pads potentially at Dinges and Maryville. All that listed, as you see in the total, is a big number, 22.6 million. Okay. Not all this can get constructed now, but again, we need to discuss what and how we want to do these things. And again, I know I kind of threw a lot at you guys briefly here, trying to be as brief as possible because I know we're in time constraints, but I'll throw it up back to you guys now to see, you know, what any comments you have and any concerns you may have about what we just listed there.
Councilmember Jazinski.
I have a series of questions for you, Mark, and forgive me because this is a new process for me. So this is me learning the process of how we do things in the town. So when you propose this pricing for this projects, what is your source of pricing? Where do you get your dollar amounts from?
What we do is we utilize several things. What I mean by that is there is Erie County bid pricing that we utilize for stone and asphalt. There's state contract pricing we utilize to buy our drainage pipe off of. And then there's internal bids that we do annually. Like I mentioned, we do a lot of annual bids this time of year for castings, for catch basin castings, manhole casting, for sanitary sewer pipe and fittings. So basically all the materials we have covered either through an internal bid or an external bid through either Erie County or New York State. Okay, so all the materials are covered one way or the other. The labor component of it is covered either internally with our in-house personnel or through one of our annual labor contracts, whether it be our public works contract, which is what we utilize to rent equipment, whether it be excavators, dump trucks, bulldozers, and we pay on an hourly rate, or through our concrete contract that we have out there that we pay for a square footage rate or a lineal foot rate for sidewalks, for curbing, for aprons. So all these pieces are accounted for in one form or another, and that allows me to come up with these dollar figures.
Okay, so if these proposed projects, what portion or portions is the town capable of doing versus hiring subcontractors? And what dollar amount of these proposed projects would we have to sub out?
On average, what we have here, just let me back up and give you a brief history. So our highway department, we have about 60 guys in there. We utilize our dump trucks to mix and match these projects in there. We run 2 internal storm sewer installation crews in highway. Okay, that is totally highway town personnel. But again, we have to buy the materials because those guys need something to work with. Okay,
Sure.
so we have 2 internal
Can't
crews
facilitate
there.
everything. I understand that, but I guess let me
Exactly.
ask the question again. of the proposed projects, what dollar amount do we have of these proposed projects do we have to sub out? Basically, I'd like to see how much money the town would get versus our subcontractors.
Well, percentage wise, just ballpark, let's say 40% of what you see there's for materials, 60% is for labor. And a ballpark out of that, I'd say 10% of that 60 will go back to town personnel and 50% of that will go out to subcontractors. Because they have the skill set. Yes, exactly. Correct. Yes.
How many subs do we currently use?
Any given day, on average, typically 4.
Okay, could you provide us with the names of these subs?
Yes, exactly. I mean, again, you'll see it going out. You're new to the process here, Michael. Every year we put the notice of bidders out, and then we come back to the board for award resolutions. And as part of that award resolution process, you're going to get a bid tabulation, exactly what contractors bid, what their bid prices were, what the equipment was, and a description of what that is. So I know you're new to this process, but again, we do that. We do have those checks and balances, and you'll see that more as we move forward, as you get into this process now.
So when we get estimates from these subcontracts, do we all get copies of the estimates?
Yes, you get that in a bid tabulation form, yes.
Do we currently have an apprenticeship program?
We do, yes, and it's in between the bid thresholds of 1 million and 3 million. So anything bid within that realm, you have to have a New York State certified apprenticeship program.
Okay. So when we do these projects, what measurements do we use to be cost effective, and who oversees and manages these projects and updates progress of these projects to assure their timelines are met?
So everything that, again, we discussed will be run through the engineering office of either myself or Paul or Jen or Pat or Drew. And then if we're not directly involved, we have support from our 3 foremen in sewer maintenance, our 7 foremen in highway. At any given time, there's checks and balances there that we all know what's going on. We, for lack of a better word, to paraphrase it, we as a town act as the general contractor. Okay, maybe that'll help give you a better explanation of what it is. So myself, with our staff here, we act as the GC. We tell the general contractor what pieces of equipment we want, when we want it, and where we want it, to make sure these jobs are being done as efficiently and as cost effectively as they possibly can.
So you're saying you do a progress report?
We do, yes, yes.
Any other questions? Don't we have Paul Pilarski here? We got to talk about the buildings yet?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Paul, there's another sheet, Kim Verst, about the capital projects for the townwide buildings. Okay,
Yeah,
Paul, you're on.
So in the 3-year increments in the past, we put together capital improvements to maintain our townwide buildings. Since ARPA came to play, and again, time of the essence here in tonight's meeting, everything you see on that are things that need to be done to keep our buildings updated, just like we would our own homes. A lot of these buildings, Alexander Town Hall, they're over 100 years old, or near it with Alexander 1925. A lot of these buildings need TLC. Fortunately, with the ARPA program, with talking with Brian Kraus and some of the board members, we're hoping that what's highlighted in yellow, we can use ARPA funds to take care of. The top of the list would be generators. And if you look at, let's start with the Cheektowaga Record Center. It was decided last year to move on with that project. That 189 was a number that I had gotten from a contractor and a generator manufacturer to get us into that ballpark. The plans are 100% complete. I'm looking to submit those plans at the next board meeting to go out to bid. That's a real number. And if we kind of scroll down to the next one, Town Hall has a generator as well that's extinct. It's not doing much to manage what's existing in Town Hall. It just manages a few lights and some minor computers. That being our home, our Town Hall, we figured that would be a good upgrade as well. Now those numbers are generated off of what the price was given for the record center. Those are not hard numbers. I did not want to take this too far in dealing with generator contractors and or manufacturers until we were given a blessing from the board. As we scroll down, there's other things on that Town Hall list. The elevator has given us a hard time over the past. We've spent several thousands of dollars to keep that thing running. It does not meet, well, it meets code, but from an air, from a ventilation purpose, there was a consensus that might be able to be utilized in ARPA spending as well. Again, everything that's highlighted here was discussed and has the potential of meeting those ARPA guidelines and recommendations. HVAC inside Town Hall. I think everyone that's been inside of council chambers know that, well, when the freight train turns on in there, it's nearly impossible to hear yourself think. That was courtesy Councilmember Kaminsky and myself. We researched that in depth, the council chambers. When the ARPA funding became available, we decided to look at the building as a whole. That building, there's a lot of masonry, a lot of brick, a lot of wall separations. It's built very well. It would take some doing in getting that upgraded to meet current ventilation requirements that since COVID has changed considerably. So we're looking at the building as a whole. I've already met with a couple of consultants that have come highly recommended from other contractors that we've used in the past, and they've given us some proposals to study what is there and what they would recommend moving forward. That building in itself is there's a bunch of Band-Aids inside of there right now that are kind of running. There's only a few of the what they call PTAC units or recovery units that are in most of the offices now that were being kept alive by our facilities department with pieces and parts. So it's an opportune time to take advantage of that. Also on that list, there's the window replacement. Again, those are old drafty windows, again, which would need to be replaced regardless at some time through our capital improvements that we typically would look at. Is that an ARPA consideration that needs to be discussed as well? Kim, if you could scroll down, just kind of stay on the yellows there. Scroll down in the spreadsheet to the bottom where it says Sigelmeyer Park. Thank you. So Sigelmeyer Park, the comfort station, we had thought we had received a couple $1 million from Timmy Myers, and I believe that money is no longer available to us. But even prior to that, there was a need for a second comfort station large enough to accommodate the new portion of the park, or the newer portion of the park where the ball diamonds are, near where the football is played. That's been on the list for quite some time, and it's back on. What's being utilized now are portable stations, portable toilet stations. That it's an opportune time again to do the right thing and provide sanitary stations at that portion, that end of the park. And if we get into the sewer department, I guess that kind of works part and parcel with what Mark Crystal was discussing. The standalone generators, that's if you see in red on the right-hand side, those drawings have been bid originally. We're looking to go to rebid them again at the next meeting. The reason that they were pulled originally, because they were extremely over budget. Those numbers are real, or pretty close to real. I did add 5% when the last bids came in, just to cover cost of living increases. So that's on the list. It's kind of like these shovel-ready projects that we're looking to get out the door. The You see various electrical and heating issues at our sewer maintenance buildings and our pump and lift stations. We spoke about that with the supervisor at the last meeting that we'd had a few weeks ago. That's on the agenda of things that may fall into the ARPA category as well. We're hoping that it does. The main pump station you see is similar to town hall. Elevator repair, there's the ventilation, there's the safety. We're, again, with your help and your guidance and recommendation, we're hoping to get that in the envelope of ARPA as well as the HVAC. As Mark had mentioned before, operating since 1980 is in desperate need of some upgrades. We've been looking at putting a Band-Aid on that as well. For the cost of $40,000, we can get that whole office area redone and take care of it, meeting current criteria with ventilation, with new HVAC units. And then lastly on the list, and I'll backtrack in just a minute, the town hall, the signs at our parks, that was a project that we did some time ago. It was built well from the ground up, and by well I mean up to the wood. The wood has since rotted. I think all of us back in the day thought that redwood was the way to go. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And the signs itself, we've put Band-Aids and used pieces and parts. The only one currently working is the one in front of the police building. We feel that it's an informational thing that would help residents, from something as simple as hiring of lifeguards at pools to information about storms, information about COVID, testing related, Amber Alerts. It was the reason that we had done it originally. And I was involved with that project several years ago, and I'm kind of have a place in my heart for that. And just briefly, I know time is of the essence and we're losing it, but if you go back up just to the top of the screen where Kim has it there, the 2 in pink and the 3 in blue, those are projects that are going to be up and coming. They're grant-related projects. The ones in blue is for the Anna Reinstein Library. Again, the roof, it's an original building built back in the 70s with 2 additions that were done to it. The roof has never been replaced. Fortunately, we've done this work to the Julia Boyer Reinstein Library 2 years ago, and we're looking to do the same thing to that as well. Again, I won't dwell on that. What's important is ARPA. And how we feel that we can properly utilize those funds and move forward. Again, like Mark, not as critical as what Mark's getting into, but we need to get these things out the door sooner than later. Again, there's 3 of them coming at you. One's at the very top of the page is the elevator project at Alexander. We have a budget of $250 courtesy of Monica Wallace, and $100,000 courtesy of the CBDG. And also part of that is the front entrance, which is below that elevator at the very top. But since COVID, we since got some pricing, some preliminary pricing was more favorable. Post-COVID is not looking very well. So we phased that job into 2 pieces. And we will monitor that once the prices come back, present it to the town board as a whole, and make a decision at that point if we need to move forward with the front entrance. The front entrance on the grand scale is not a necessity. It just really improves the entrance to the building with the current town personnel and with the newest Boys and Girls Club that started back in September, October. So I'll turn it over to you guys for questions.
Yeah, Paul, we're going to have to continue with this discussion in 2 weeks. We'll probably have to bring you back. So at least this is the start with the presentation, and because we have a 7 o'clock meeting and we still didn't get into the discussions about what the firemen need. So Councilmember Adamczak, do you want to, can we come back into a work session after the regular meeting and talk about the firemen?
Sure.
Or would that be okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna have to leave now.
Can I quickly jump in 1 second here? Throw my
Yes.
2 cents in quickly. So my phone's been blowing up with department heads. I mean, Mark, Crystal, Paul were given an assignment. Hey, give us your top things that need to be done town-wide, and they followed it to a T. They did a great job there. But a lot of people are concerned right now that between total prices of both projects, that leaves $800,000 left of ARPA money if we're to follow both of those to a T. So I think this would call for a bigger meeting for all of us just to literally talk about ARPA funding. We've talked things like LED streetlights. We've talked building projects, facilities. Some department heads are concerned that this is only covering sewer, highway, parks, and facilities. We need to address what does the senior department need? What does IT, police, others, transportation for our seniors, human service programs, food pantry, stuff like that. So I think this requires a bigger meeting in general, maybe a special meeting. We all come together with the department heads. If department heads can send us their top needs and we can see how it fits in with ARPA and relate to, but we're to spend every dollar on these two projects. That would eat up every single penny almost. And those guys did a great job on their presentations because they followed the assignment to a T. What are your top priorities? And we need that from all department heads so we can make fair choices and logical choices on
And
what to spend this money on.
Jill Gorman has come already about her program for the, assignment of the rec, or signing up for the rec programs. Rick Coburn's, we've already done that. And I believe we purchased a couple things. There's been more, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and some of it we just need to look at and see where can we get other funding from, whether it's a grant, bonding, like the LED streetlights, we'll see a return on investment right away. So maybe not using ARPA funding on that, but other stuff where maybe the Ralph Wilson Foundation can help with the trails or something. We just got to look at other pots of money as well while we make these decisions and see what is out there.
So I'm going to put this back on the work session next week, and whatever department head wants to come in, we have to get going on this. So yes, have them.
Just to really quick, this list that's here, there's a building in the sewer department where what masonry was on the list. We got to do that. Town hall elevator, we all know about that. We got to do it. The signs, those informational signs, we got to do that. I would like to see the parks, the pump stations, and the drainage piece. We have to do that. I had a chance to go through the pump stations with Lou from Sewer last Wednesday, and to see the piping and how old some of this stuff is, going back to the mid 50s at the site on George Urban, and the water flow is going to increase substantially over there. There's a lot of stuff on their list that is a critical need. So I understand what Councilman Pilarski's saying. But a lot of this stuff is going to go dealing with drainage and going underground. Unfortunately, we've got an aging town, and I want to hear about other needs. But I think
the thing is, and I just want to jump right in real quick, is one of the categories for the ARPA, which it is easy for this, is sewer, water, and broadband. So sewer, it says, it doesn't say sanitary or storm. So all these projects can be covered under the ARPA. It's just an easy category. There's 4 categories. So and the other one would be responding to COVID-19. So, and economic revenue loss. And that's where they mention the parks. You can always.
Right. And lastly, we all know how the supply chains are strained and delayed. I mean, if we're ordering trucks now or packers and things like that we're waiting a year plus, we start ordering parts and supplies for this stuff, we might not be able to start the work for a year and a half. So we don't have to make a decision now, but we need to make a decision relatively quickly.
Well, we're going to continue, I think, every work session now and keep discussing this. We're going to have to come back to a work session after the regular meeting so we can finish up for Councilmember Adams Act. So let's go into.
Do you think real fast by any chance, like we could maybe pick 1 or 2 very important things that maybe Mark Crystal could get out to a bid like very, very soon?
Yeah, we could do that.
I know he's like, it's very important that he kind of like gets this stuff out soon, because God only knows if we're able to get the equipment or get the products that he needs. That's only my concern.
All
is
right.
with the sewer.
Why don't we do this? We'll go to the regular meeting. It's almost 7 o'clock. We have to get in there. And then we'll come back to the work session and give them the okay, because we did discuss a lot of this already. So Mark, if you want to come back with us, or we'll let you know afterwards tomorrow what the board decided to move forward with. It's up to you. But
Yeah,
Kim,
I'll stick around, because again, if you guys got questions or whatever, I mean, to Chris's point, to Brian's point, I mean, again, we don't have to do it all, but some of these things are very time sensitive. So if we can pick out an item or 2 or 3 and say, hey, listen, we're on agreement, let's go. Let's follow up with discussions on the other, that's great. But yeah, I'll stick around. That's fine. Yeah.
Well, we have to come back into this meeting. Kim, we're gonna have to come out of this meeting. We're gonna sign into the town board regular meeting now and come back to this one. Is that okay? Can we do that, Kim?
No, I'll send you all a new link.
Oh, okay. So we have to get a new link. She'll send us that.
Okay.
And Mark Christos, you can do that. And the rest of the department heads, we're gonna have to get them on a work session to talk about what their needs are too. So,
Okay.
all right, so let's go
All right.
into the regular meeting and then we'll come back, and then we still have an executive session we have to do. So,
Okay.
all right, thanks, everyone. I'll see you at the regular